Okay, so here we are with round 1. So you can either do a chain of 4 or you can do a magic ring, which is what I'm doing now. And then we do a chain of 3, and we're now doing 5 trebles into the ring, making sure you're working over both the tail and the circle. 2, 3, 4. This is 5, so we've got a chain of 3 and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's 5. And as you get to the end of the 5th one, I need to find the tail of my green yarn because I had it already and it's disappeared. So we then take the green yarn for this one and pull that through at the end, and this bit's a little bit fiddly because you need to be working over all of the threads just to tuck them in nice and neatly. We're carrying on doing trebles into the circle, but you can see I've got all the threads just pinched in there to work over. So that's 1, 2, just clean that off a bit, 3, 4, 5, and we're getting to number 6 there, and we're going to change back to the working thread of yarn B. So that's the orange one being pulled through, and then find the orange tail and pull it ever so gently there. You can see how that magic ring really does just become magic and close up. And then we do a slip stitch, making sure you don't mix it up with the tail. Pull that through both loops, and there you have it, a lovely little circle. I know it looks amazing after you've had all those threads running around, but you've got a nice neat little circle, and that is round 1 complete. Okay, so for round 2 we start with a chain of 3 and 1 treble into the same point of the chain 3, and not forgetting now that we are carrying threads around with us. So as before, we're keeping one of the threads for the colour, the other colour, working along underneath. So we're carrying it round, crocheting it in as we go along. And then we're working 2 trebles into each of the next 5 orange stitches and crocheting over the green one. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and as we get to that second stitch, so we've got all these pairs here, and then as we've worked that final stitch, picking up our green thread and bringing that through, and then we're doing the same thing, working around the green stitches and carrying the orange thread. So 2 UK trebles into So including the chain of 3 at the beginning, you should have 12 stitches in each colour and quite a nice circle. We pull that orange thread through on the last final pull through of the final stitch and slip, doesn't want to through, there we go. Right, so that's what we should have at this point. We can pull this centre one a little bit tighter and fasten the ends in, which I might do before I start my next round, just so that those tails are not in my way and there's no risk of them getting caught on anything. Okay, see you in a moment in round 3. Okay, round 3 is on the same theme as the first 2 rounds, so we're going to do a chain of 3 and then 1 treble into the base of that chain 3 and then 1 treble into the next stitch, and the combination then going up. And what did we forget? We didn't carry the thread with us, so just take that 1 stitch back, and we need to be carrying the green thread along the back, so with only a slight loop there, we'll definitely get away with that. What you don't want is big strings floating around the back. It's very difficult to work with and it can really upset the tension. So 2 and 1 and then 2 and 1, going all the way round, and as before, when you get to here, you're going to change yarn colours, so just keep going for a moment longer. So we've got 2 and then 1 treble, 2 trebles, 1, and then the final combination. And the important bit here is remembering to change the yarn on that final pull through. So grab that, pull that through there, and then we're going to work the same combination in green all the way around this side. So 2 into the first stitch, 1 into the next, 2, 1, 2, 1, changing back to your orange yarn at the end. So don't forget to carry that round with you. Okay, we'll show you that in a moment. Back in. Okay, so here we are at the end of round 3, so you can see how we've got very much the 50-50, and we're back with the orange yarn for the next round. Okay, we'll see you in a moment with round 4. Okay, so still working on the lovely easy round before we start to get more complicated. So we've got a chain of 3 and 1 treble into the base of that stitch, remembering to pick up the green thread and tuck it in at the back there. So then we're doing 1 treble into each of the next 2 stitches. So the combination this time is going to be 2 trebles into 1 stitch and then 1 treble into each of the next 2 stitches. So it's a 2 and then a 1 and a 1. So you can see that starting there. So we've got the chain of 3 and the treble, and then 2 individuals, and then 2 into 1, 2 individuals. So very much the same as the row before, just we've got an extra individual stitch between each pair. And again, change when you get to this point and then carry the yarn round so that it's with you, the orange yarn is with you when you get to this end. I won't make you watch me do a load of trebles. I'm sure you're quite busy doing your own, so we'll join you again in a moment at the end of round 4. Okay, so we've finished the initial circles for the centre. That's round 4. Don't fasten off either of your yarns, you will need them at different points now, but you need to keep them attached. We're now going to start the foxtail, so things get just a little bit more tricky, but definitely different to what we've just been working. So hopefully you're all comfortably at this point, and we'll be back in a moment to start the tail. Okay, so for the foxtail, these are now done in rows rather than rounds, and we're just using the orange at the moment. So make a chain of 16. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then we're going to work a treble into the 4th chain from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going in there, bring that back through, and I've worked my treble. Then it's 1 treble into each of the next 2 chains. So moving along a stitch each time. Oops. And then we're going to treble 2 together over the next 2 stitches. So I start my first treble, yarn over hook and through 2, pause when you've got your 2 stitches on your hook, and then start your next treble, round and through 2, and then it's round and through all 3 loops. Oops. And that will have decreased you 1 and given a slight kink to the tail, which is what we're after. Then a double treble into the next chain, so round and through 2, round and through 2, and again round and through 2, and then double treble 2 together over the next 2 chains. So I've done my double wrap. I'm going to bring that back through, so I've got my 4 loops, round and through 2, round and through 2, pause at that point and start again with a double wrap and into the next chain, round and through 2, round and through 2, and then again round and through all 3. So you've got your first of the double treble 2 togethers, and then we've got another double treble, and then we're going to work another double treble 2 together over the next 2 chains. And then a double treble into each of the next 2 stitches. So oops, didn't double wrap, there we go. So that's 1, and then that's taking me right back to my initial one there. So we tucked right up against the work. Okay, and then we are slip stitching into the front loop only of the 4th stitch along on the body round. So I've marked that already just to make it easier to show you. So at this point we've got 1, 2, I'm not treating that one as my first stitch, or maybe I should. Anyway, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to go in there. 4, first slip stitch, because we're also going to do a slip stitch into the next front loop only, and that just pulls it together nice and tight at that point. So yeah, that marked my second slip stitch. We will be turning in a moment to work back along that row, but you've got like a little gap there, and that's securely anchored at both sides. Okay, so we'll pause there for a moment and we'll come back with row 2. Right, okay, so we've turned around and we're now doing a 1 chain, which isn't going to count as a stitch, and then we're going to work a double crochet, that's a UK double crochet, into the first double treble of the row below. So 1 double crochet, a half treble into each of the next 3 stitches, so that's 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to half treble 2 together over the next 2 stitches, so that's where you have wrapped, gone through and pull your other one through, and then wrapped again, gone in, pulled that through, so you've got your 5 stitches there, and then you pull through all 5 together. And then we've got a double crochet into the next stitch, and then we're going to double crochet 2 together, so bring that through into your next stitch, bring another loop through there, round through all 3, and then we're working a slip stitch almost at the very end of the tail, and we're actually going to fasten off then. So we're fastening off this orange yarn. There we go, and this will be the tail, and it is going to be brought this way shortly to wrap round. Not just yet, we've still some other bits to do, but that's what you'll be looking for at the end. Okay, so we'll pause for a minute and come back with the next little bit. Okay, so for the tip of the tail we are using the cream yarn, and so with you're not told to turn your work, so I am working into what feels like the back of the work, but it won't be, it will become the front when you've finished. So I need to make a chain of 3, and I've gone into, so this was your first row here, I've gone into the side, sort of the end of that row, so that's your long stitch there. We're working into the long stitch at the tip of the tail. We're going to do a chain of 3, and then we're going to treble 2 together, all into that same long stitch. So we bring it through the first 2, then we do it again, bring it through the first 2, and then through all 3. And you can see how that gives you a lovely little bobble at the end of the tail. Then we also fasten that off, and then you've a little bit of sewing up to do to make that nice and neat. So just remember that your wrong side is actually going to be this bit, so I would sew all your ends into this side. Okay, we'll pause there and see you again in a moment for the next bit. Okay, round 5. So we've got the wrong side facing, the tail's sort of out of the way there, and we are rejoining with the green yarn into the very first or last stitch of that particular round, but the very first green stitch, just to make that easy. And we're going to do a chain of 3, which counts as a treble, and then we're going to work 1 treble into each of the next 2 stitches, and then 2 trebles into the next stitch. And then it's 1 treble into each of the next 3, and then 2 trebles into the next stitch. And we are working completely under those 2 stitches there, so you're picking up both threads on this particular bit. So it's a 3 individuals and then 2 into 1. I'm just going to pause the video for a moment there, and I'm going to meet you back up at this point here, because it does change slightly when we get back to the orange section of the row. So we'll pause for a moment and come back after we've worked the combinations of 3 individual stitches and then 2 into 1. Okay, so once we get to the orange section, we are doing basically the same thing, except we're only working into the front loop, and the front loops are these stitches here. So you can see how, hopefully, before we were going under both, so you were picking both loops up. This time we're only picking that one, and it's the front loop that is towards you. Don't be mistaken into picking up that one, because that is the front loop of the front of the work. So it's the front loop but with the back facing you. So we work as before, 3 trebles, but only picking that loop up because we want the front to be slightly more pronounced when we've finished. It won't be that obvious until you've got the round finished and turned your work, but it does make a difference to the look on the front. So I've done 3 individuals, and then I'm doing 2 into 1, and then very carefully another 3 individuals, always in the orange bit. For this section you're working into that back loop only, so it does feel a little bit loose and stringy at that point where you're joining it, but it does work, and it will become more secure and solid as you work. So I'll pause there, and then I'll show you what we've achieved at the end of the round. Okay, so at the end of that round, make sure you do the complete circle. It's quite easy to suddenly think you need to stop where the tail is joined, but you don't. You need to go all the way to the end with your final pair of trebles into the back loop only of that final stitch. Slip stitch to join, and then we will be turning the work. But if I now turn it over, you can see how there's a slightly more pronounced round there. This one is much smoother at this section here, so you want that slightly raised look at that point. Okay, we'll join you again very shortly with round 6. Okay, round 6. We're going to start this time with the right side of the work facing again, and 2 chains, which counts as a half treble, and then we're going to work another half treble into the base of the chain 2. So the half trebles where you pull through all 3. Then we work 1 half treble into each of the next 4 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2 half trebles into the next stitch after that. And then we're going to keep working a combination of a half treble into the next 4 stitches, and then 2 half trebles into the 5th so that's 2 half trebles there. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're working 2 into this one. So the combination this time is 5 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4 individuals and 2 into the 5th one. We're going to work that all the way around. So I shall let you carry on working that combination, and we'll see you again shortly at the end of the round. Okay, so here we are at the end of this round. So we've finished with 4 individual half trebles, and we have slip stitched there to join. Don't turn your work, and don't fasten off the yarn yet. We will be starting round 7 shortly, so you should have a nice even flat piece of work at this point. Okay, we'll see you again shortly with the next round. Okay, so round 7. This is where we square off the circle, and in this one, on the previous round, there were half trebles, and the unique thing with the half treble is that round the edge you not only get this little love heart shape here, but if we go one further back, you get the same looking thing here. So in order to make a nice firm join, we're not using this front one at that point where we'd normally go under like that. We're not using that one. We're actually going under the back 2 there for our stitches, and that way we'll get a prominent line or circle around the front, which is what we want for effect on this one. So we start with a 1 chain, and that is counting as a stitch for this particular row, and then we're going to do double crochets, and we're going to do 5 of these into each of the next stitches going into these back 2. So the front one you can probably just see is still sat there, so we're going sort of into the middle of what would be the normal stitch. So we need 1, I'll show you that again there, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we're doing 2 half trebles. All the time we're going under, so into the middle, and then picking up the 2 loops there. So 2 half trebles, then 2 normal trebles, and a double treble, and that will have then taken us to the corner, and I've marked the corners just for ease while I'm demonstrating. So then we're doing 2 double trebles, but we're doing them both into the next stitch because this is the corner. So it's a double wrap and in, bring it back through, and then wrapping through 2, wrapping through 2, wrapping through 2, and then a 2 chain, and then another 2 double trebles into the same stitch again. So that has given us our corner there, and then we've got the combination, nice easy one this time, of a double treble, then into the next stitch we've got a normal treble, followed by another normal treble into the next stitch, and then a half treble into the next 2 stitches, so 1 there and 1 there, and then 7 double crochet. 1, oops, missed my other loop there. Make sure each time you get your 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you start in your combination again of 2 half trebles, all worked into those back 2 loops, 2 normal trebles, and a double treble, and then we're at the next corner again. So you can see there the effect that you're getting. So we're back at a corner here, so we're going to do 2 double trebles, 2 chain and 2 double trebles there as well, and keep working that combination around the square till we've finished. So we'll join you again very shortly. Okay, so here we are at the end. I'm going to show you this side. So you've got your square, and here you've got your original 1 chain and then 1 double crochet into the next 5 stitches, and you've finished with a 1 double crochet there. So the 1 chain, which counts as a double crochet, gives you your block of 7 at that point. So yeah, it's a nice way of squaring off this circle, and you can see how you've got this raised line going round here. So we'll pause it there and we'll be back shortly for round 8. Okay, round 8. The nice easy thing with this is everything is half trebles, and there's a couple of chains thrown in there as well. So we're doing an initial 2 chain, which counts as your first half treble, and then we're working 1 half treble into every stitch, just in the normal way. We're not doing anything fancy with. You've got your sort of love heart section going down there, and we're just going in underneath both of them, and that's because most of these stitches don't have that additional loop. So you're working half trebles all the way along the sides, and then into the corners you're going to have a half treble, 2 chain and another half treble. So that's a nice, simple, easy way of doing it. When you've finished, hopefully you will have 23 stitches all the way down each side, and that includes the 2 stitches that you've done in the corner, but not the 2 chains. They're separate to that. So you'd work all the way to the corner, 2 chains, another half treble, all worked into that corner space, and then you start again with your next half treble. So just do a quick check as you've finished that you've got 23 all the way around. Okay, we'll see you again in a moment. Okay, so here we are at the end of round 8, and you've slip stitched there to the top of the first 2 chain to join. So you've got these nice sides now, nice firm sides with the little 2 chain spaces. So just make sure you've got 23 stitches from there to there with your 2 chain spaces in the corner. Okay, back in a moment with round 9. Okay, round 9, very similar to round 8, except this time we are doing trebles. So we're going to have a chain of 3 and then 1 treble into every stitch until you get to the corners. So it's a nice standard UK treble. Do make sure you're doing the UK version, or translate your information into the USA version. But need to make sure you're getting the right height of stitches, otherwise things are not going to fit together later on. And when we get to the corners, which we're nearly there, do my final. and then you have 2 trebles, 2 chain, and another 2 trebles into your corners, and then we're setting off again down the side. You need to end up with 27 stitches, and that includes the 2 that you'll have in the corners. So you've got 4 stitches accounted for in those corners, and your other 23 along that side. Okay, we'll see you again very shortly at the beginning of this round. Okay, so we have finished the outer part of this. So I've done a slip stitch to join there, and we're going to cut the yarn off and fasten off there. So across these sides you should have 27 stitches, and then the 2 chain corner spaces. So we're going to pause there, and then we'll come back and start working on the rest of the fox. Okay, see you again in a moment. We're back on the lovely bright orange yarn B, and the fox face is made right side facing all the time and in a continual spiral, so kind of amigurumi, apart from we're not making it properly 3D. It'll still be a flat piece of work, but in a spiral. And we recommend a stitch marker at either the very end or beginning of the row. So with this, we have to make this time a chain of 5. So it's we're not working into a magic loop. We definitely need a chain of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're doing a double crochet in the second chain from the hook, so not that one, but this one. So we've gone in, brought a loop through and through both, and then 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 chains. So that, oops, getting carried away. I did a treble there. So into the hole, bring a loop back through. You've got your 2 loops on your hook. Bring it through both. I'm desperate to do a treble. And there we go. 2 double crochet, and then we're working 3 double crochet into this final chain. So 1, 2, and then into the same hole again we've got 3, and as we're doing that we're rotating the work, so we're now going to work across the bottom of there, and we're going to put 1 double crochet into each of the sides of the chain. This is always that little bit fiddly, so worth doing slowly. And then 2 double crochet into that final stitch. 1, 2. So you'll have 10 stitches in total going round, and I've got my little stitch marker, and that was my final stitch, so I'm going to pop that in there so that I know as I'm working back round where I'm stopping and starting. So we'll just pause for a moment, and then we will be right back with round 2 of the face. Okay, round 2. It can be quite fiddly to find that first stitch on this because it is quite tiny at the moment. So I've just popped those in so you can see where this is my first stitch and this was my last stitch. Now into the first stitch we need to do 2 double crochet, so I can take that one out for now. It's just making it a bit too tricky to work. So that's 1, 2, and then 2 in individual double crochet, and then 2 double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So that's 1, 2, and they should be the 3 stitches that were worked into one of the chains on the last row. So that's 2 and another 2, and that's got us round the corner. Then we've got 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and then 2 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. So I shall just take that one out for a minute. That's 1, 2, and then I'm going to pop that one back in straight away. So that's the end of my last round, and you can now see you're getting something a little bit sort of easier to look at and see. Okay, we'll pause there for a minute and come back with the next round. Okay, round 3, there's quite a bit going on in this round. So we are doing 2 double crochet into that first stitch, then making a chain of 4, and then we're doing a double crochet into the second chain from the hook, and a half treble into the next one, and then a normal treble into the next one, and this is creating the fox's ears. Then we miss a stitch, so we're missing that one and working into the next one, and we're doing 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. That makes the top of the head between the ears. Then we do another chain of 4, and we repeat again. So we're missing a stitch and working a double crochet into the next stitch, then a half treble, and then a normal treble. Miss another stitch on round 2, so we'll be working into the one after, and we're doing 2 double crochets, and remembering this time we're changing back to yarn G, which is the cream yarn, for that final pull through on there, because the rest of this round is going to be crocheted in the cream. But as before, we need to carry the yarn that we're not using with us. So it'll be nice and easily hidden this time, because it is of course the orange yarn. So I'm just going to, oops, seems to be getting in the way. I'm just going to set that up there. So we're now doing 2 double crochet in the cream, or the ecru, into each of the next 2 stitches. Oops, didn't grab that then. So that's 2 double crochet into the next 2 stitches, so that's given us 4. 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, then a chain of 3, 1, 2, 3, miss 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and then keeping this orange thread running with us, 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And then move that out of the way, 2 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And that takes us just to there. And we've got to change back to the orange yarn at the end of that one. So hopefully you can see there what we've created. So he's got kind of the beardy bit on that one. We'll be back in a moment with round 4 to complete the head, and you'll see the almost complete thing then. There's just a little bit more to do after that. Okay, round 4. So we're going to slip stitch into that next stitch there, and then we're going to do 3 more slip stitches along the side of the ear. So 1, 2, and 3. Oops, splitting. And then 2 chain and 3 more. So 1, 2, 3, and that's just giving a little bit of a firmer, bigger look to the ear. Slip stitch into the next 2 stitches. Yeah, I was just doubting myself then. But 1, 2, and then same thing again. 3 stitches, 3 slip stitches down here. 1, 2, 3, followed by 2 chain, and then another 1, 2, 3 slip stitches, and then another final 2 into these final 2 stitches at the side. And there we go. You can see you've got a nice defined pair of ears now. And then we're going to fasten off, and we'll complete in the next section with the nose area. So that's what you're aiming for. Okay. The nose, quite a fiddly little thing, but worth it. So we've got 3 stitches here, and we're going to go into the first stitch. Then we grab that yarn, bring it back through, do a 1 chain, which doesn't count as a stitch, and then we're doing a double crochet into that first stitch. And as you can see there, I'm wrapping the thread and the cream yarn from the one before, so we're encasing those 3 chains as we go along. We're then going to put the brown yarn over the hook, go into the next hole, And then where we've done it before, where we're working over the yarns, we're bringing the orange thread with us. So fiddly, but doable. So I'm going to grab the working yarn, bring that back through, and then I'm going round and through 2. Okay, just need a bit more tension on my hand there. Then we keep working into the same hole, so we wrap the hook, then through it into the hole, grab it back through. So we're basically doing some double crochet, and so that's 1. Not forgetting to wrap each time. You need to be bringing the working orange yarn along with you if you possibly can. And again, oh look, now the brown yarn's attacking me from the back. Just try and pull that brown yarn out of the way. That's it. Wrap into the hole, grab it, bring it back through, round and through 2. Just need slightly more of that brown yarn. In again. And after we've done all those what appear to be double crochets there, and we've got all these loops on the hook, you should end up with 5 of the contrast colour and 1 of the original. And then you wrap your yarn again in. Now let me get this right. Grabbing the orange yarn. Not getting it tangled up with the others. You bring that all the way through, so it's the orange yarn we go back to pull that all the way through. So we've done a bobble in the brown yarn, but immediately as on finishing that we are changing back to the orange, and then we're doing 1 double crochet at the back there, and that pushes that nose forward but gives us a little bit of orange casing there. So we're going to fasten off all the ends and weave them in at the back. Okay, I hope that helps. It's a little bit of a tricky thing to do, but if you work it slowly it does work. Okay, we'll see you again in a moment. Okay, so this is where we've got to so far with the fox. I've embroidered 2 little eyes on and then sewn the face and the tail down. The next thing we're going to do is make the little forget-me-nots and then attach those. So we'll see you again in a moment with some forget-me-nots. Okay, so forget-me-nots. We'll start off with the gold thread. This is to make the centre of the flower. So we can either do a chain of 4 with a slip stitch to join, or make the magic ring. So as you know, I prefer to do a magic ring. There we go. And to secure that we do 1 chain, and that 1 chain doesn't count as a stitch. We then do 10 double crochets, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you carefully should be able to pull the tail, making sure it doesn't twist in on itself as you go to the end there, and then we go into that first 1 chain and do a slip stitch to join. and then we are going to fasten off that yarn. So just cut that, pull it through, and then I'm going to sew those ends in around the back of the circle before we start the next bit, because I really don't like to have them in the way. Okay, back in a moment with round 2. Okay, so we've got our tiny little circle there, and we're now going to work with the lovely cornflower blue yarn, and the end seems to have vanished. There we go. It was there a moment ago. Right, so we have put the hook into any of the stitches, doesn't matter which one, and we're joining this yarn into that stitch, and to anchor it we're going to do the 1 chain, and then we're on with actually creating the petals. So working into the next stitch, we're doing a double crochet, then a half treble, these are all going into the same stitch, then a normal treble, and another half treble, and finally a double crochet. So that's 1 petal made. Then we're doing into the next stitch is just a slip stitch, so bring it through and through again, and then we start again with a double crochet and a half treble, a normal treble, a half treble, and a double crochet, and a slip stitch into the next stitch, and you keep going round. You'll create 5 petals, and when you get back to where you did the original join, you will do a slip stitch into that one to bring it all together. So we'll come back in just a moment when we've got to that point. Okay, so here we are with 5 little petals on there, and then I'm going to sew those in at the end. So we just do a little slip stitch into that last one, and I've cut the yarn, and then we can sew it in. So we're going to make 3 of those and use them in the bottom edge of the square with the fox in. Okay, I'll show you that in a moment when it's all complete. Okay, so here we are at the end of the fox square. I think it's really beautiful, this. I love the colours that go with it, and how they all blend together. So we'll finish there, and we'll see you again shortly with the next stage. Okay. Okay, so we are going to now join the squares, and with this you need the backs together, so that puts the backs together, and this needs to be the right way up, so this side is where I'm going to do my crochet. So I'm going into the first corner at that side. Okay, that's that way up, and then I've got my dark green yarn for this. I'm coming through 1 corner, and I'm doing a 1 chain, and we're going to be doing a series of slip stitch and 1 chain all the way across. So I'm then going into the front of the next corner, so I'm going to actually spread them out so that you can see the 2 sides. So I'm going in that corner, and I'm going to pull that through and do a slip stitch and a 1 chain. So between each linking stitch, then it's a 1 chain. So for this one we're going into the first stitch of this one. We're going to slip that through, do a 1 chain, and I'm looking at the other side. I'm going to miss a stitch and I'm going into the second stitch, and you slip stitch it through. Oops. And a 1 chain, and then we miss a stitch, go in, pull that through and through, and a 1 chain, miss a stitch, into the next one, always from the front, never from the back, so we're going in from the front. 1 chain, miss a stitch, bring that through and through, 1 chain, miss a stitch, bring that through, and we're going to do that all the way across. So every alternate stitch with a chain in between, and that will produce this lovely linking zigzag effect. Okay, I'll show you at the other end how we finish that off, and we're going to repeat this for every set of squares so that we join all 5 squares together. Okay, so here at the end, I'm doing a 1 chain, and we miss the final stitch on the back square there, and we go into the corner, pull that through, and then do a 1 chain, and we do our final slip stitch into the corner of the front square, and then we're going to fasten off. So that is what you should have when you've finished. So we'll cut that yarn, pull that through, and I've got the 2 ends to sew in, and you've got a nice neat join between. So you need to do that for all of the squares. The next one for me will be the one with the fox on, so it'll just work its way across, and with all the ends sewn in, and I'll show you that when we've completely finished. I'll try and get you a wider shot. Okay, so we'll see you again shortly when we've linked all of them together. So here we are with the finished section. So that's how it will look. Okay, we'll be back again with the next part shortly. So here we are with row 20. We're turning our work, so we're back on the right side. We're going to do a chain of 3 to start the row. Look, I'm all tangled up. That's not good, is it? Okay, so slightly longer tail there. I'm doing 1 with my tail and 2 with my working yarn, so that's my 3 chain at the beginning of the row. Then we miss 2 stitches, miss the next stitch, and then, so that's that one, and do 2 trebles into the next stitch after that. So I've got my chain of 3, I've missed a stitch, and I've done 2 trebles into the next stitch. And then we're going to start a pattern now of miss a stitch and 2 trebles into the next stitch. So you're kind of making a bit of a V there, and then miss a stitch and 2 trebles, miss a stitch and 2 trebles. that's what you're aiming for next, and when we get to the end we'll just show you the ending section and then the change for the yarn colour. So we'll see you again in a minute. Okay, so here we are at the end of the row, and we finish with 2 stitches into the last stitch. That makes sure you keep your stitch count correct, and then we change to the next yarn, which for me is I, and it's chocolate. So we'll pause there for a minute and come back with row 21. Okay, so we're back now with row 21, and we've changed to the brown yarn at the end of the last row. Now with this one we're going to be working you've got like a V stitch here, and you're going to be working into or in between that V, not into the gap. So it's quite a specific bit of instruction in the written pattern. So we're going to start off with a chain of 3, and then make sure I've turned my work around because I haven't then. So that's classed as the first stitch there, and then you miss the next 2 stitches but work into this gap, and again we're working 2 trebles into, I'm going to call it a space, it's not technically a space. When you mention space I think people would tend to go for here, but it isn't. You're missing that gap and just keep working 2 trebles in the space. So miss that gap, go in between your trebles of the previous row, and you keep doing that all the way to the end, and then I will just show you the end because we need to make sure that we've got 145 stitches at the end. So it does feel ever so slightly odd when you're starting that you've done your chain of 3 here and then sort of missed somehow that block, but it does work. So if you follow that instruction, and I'll show you at the other end what we're getting on to. Okay, we'll be back in a minute with the end section. Okay, so here we are at the end, and I've done 2 trebles into that V there, that final V, and then we've got the original 3 chain, and you're going to work your final 2 trebles into that. And it may feel a little bit odd as to why you're doing it, but it does work. The fact that we had the single chain of 3 there and then those worked into it is the exact opposite to what's at the other end, and it helps keep the edges level. If you're not careful, you go off at a tangent with these, so you really need to do that. Sorry, I've just forgotten as well that I'm supposed to change my yarn. So at the end of row 21 we go back to yarn A, which for me is the lovely sage green. So we've gone right to the very end with the pairs of stitches and then swapped to the sage green, and we'll be back in a moment with the instructions for row 22. Okay. So row 22 is nice and easy because it is a repeat of row 21. So you do your chain of 3. As you know, I like to do 1 with the tail and 2 with the working yarn. Change this around, and then that was the first stitch, so we missed 2 and we work into that, what is the second set of V's. And again we're doing a pair of UK trebles, and you can do that all the way along So missing out these gaps, going into the V, into the middle of the 2 stitches. And so that's what you're looking for at the beginning of your first row. So you've got your chain of 3, which counts for that first stitch, miss 2 and work into that centre of the V there. Do that all the way along to the other end, and we'll catch you at the end and start row 23. Okay. Okay, so we're right at the end, and as before we're going to finish with 2 trebles into that last stitch. Now this time you don't fasten off or change yarns or anything, because the next row we're going to continue with yarn A. So if you keep hold of that yarn, and we'll come back in a moment with the next row. Okay, so row 23 is an equally lovely easy row to do. It's nice to have a few easy ones to do in between. So we've got a chain of 3, that counts as your first stitch, and then we're working a treble into every stitch across. So obviously we missed that first one because that is your first stitch. And then really simply work a UK treble all the way along. So that's going under both loops for a nice firm join. So that's where you've got to on that one. Chain of 3, missing that first one there, and then working a treble all the way to the end. And I recommend at the end just checking you've got your 145. You should have, but it's always worth a quick count. It saves a lot of aggravation further down when you either have too many loops left at the end or not enough. Okay, we'll see you in a minute at the end of the row. Okay, here we are right at the end, and I'll just show you this so you know exactly where to finish. So the very final stitch goes into the chain of 3 on the previous row. So I've just done a quick count and made sure that I've got my 145 stitches, because on the next row there's some quite intricate stuff happening, so we need to make sure we've got the right amount of stitches. So I'll pause there and I'll come back with some instructions for row 24. Okay, row 24, there's a bit of prep to do for this, and because this row is going to introduce several little blocks of colour, you now need to cut yourself some lengths of yarn. They all need to be approximately 120 centimetres long, and we're going to use 5 different colours. And what you've got here, there will be 5 lengths 120 centimetres long in B, C and D. So those 3 colours for me, I've just looped them round at the end, but I've got 5 in each of those colours. And then you need 4 pieces in E and I. So double check your colours. It wouldn't be a complete disaster if you got some of the wrong colours, but you don't want to run out of yarn later on. So I would say go with the amount. So that's what you need to get ready and prepped to start with, because rows 24 and 25 definitely reuse these. So I'll pause for a moment there, I'll get myself ready for the next bit of the row, and then we'll come back to these 6 sections of yarn. Okay? Okay, so you've got all the colours cut to length, and I recommend having them laid out in the colour sequence that you're going to use. So let's get started. Row 24, you start off with a 2 chain, which counts as a half treble, because we're now going to be doing some back post trebles, which, because we're doing them around the back of the post, makes them shorter. So we start as a normal treble, but instead we turn the work over and we go in from the back and we go round the stem of the stitch, and then bring that back through, and then round and through 2, and round and through 2, and then we're going to do that again. So round, but we're coming in from the back to the front and then through there. So we've grabbed that whole stitch, brought the yarn back through, round and through 2, round and through 2, and we're doing 5 stitches. So the next one, same thing. Another one. Oops, making sure you don't snag any other threads on the way through, and then round the final stitch there, round and through 2. So we've got our initial 2 chain, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not quite complete, because we're now going to grab our first colour change, and oops, that didn't work, did it? Bring it through that too. Okay, so you've got your little tail at the back there, and then for the colour change we're doing 3 front post trebles around the next stitch. So this is the next stitch. Grab your yarn as normal, or wrap your yarn as normal, then through, this time from front to back and then front again, so you've wrapped all the way round the post of that stitch, round and through 2, round and through 2, wrap again, go back to the same stem there, round again, through 2 and through 2, and then wrap again and do it for a 3rd time, wrap and through 2, and then make sure that goes to the back. That's important. You're carrying these threads, well, you're not carrying it across the back, but you need it to be at the back, and bring the green back through. So the only thing that's carrying across the back on this row is a single green thread, and then we're back to doing back post trebles. So we've changed back to yarn A, and that's going to be the stitch we're working at, but we turn the work over. This is a little bit fiddly, I have to say, but it really does work. Make sure you're going through the correct stitch. So if I show you from that side and from the other. Okay, this is the fiddly bit, to keep hold of that yarn and bring it through without snagging anything else, because it's dying to snag something. There we go. And also I'm trying not to pull that green thread too tightly, so that is quite a tricky stitch to do, and then they get easier after that. So round the back of the post, in fact don't hold it too tightly, I'm actually pulling this too tight, which is why I'm having a problem. Round, through, back, to front, and then through the back there, bring that back through. You can see how when you relax it, it's a lot easier. So around there, grab it, bring it back through, round and through 2, round and through 2. So I've done 1, 2, 3, 4. This is my final one. Round and through 2, and then we're going to get our next colour, which for me is this lovely mustard yellow, and we're going to start that again. So you bring that through the final 2, which stops the yarn bleeding of the colours across. Leave everything at the back, and then 3 front post trebles in this yarn. So that's 1, 2, 3, and again put that to the back. Find your green yarn and bring that through, and then you're back to working back post trebles. Again, that first one is going to fight with you. Should anchor my yarn properly. Don't set my hand up, I haven't got the right tension on the yarn. So through at the back there, grab it, bring it back through, round and through two, round and through two. I can pull that bit of yellow yarn just through to the back again. And so you're working across the row, doing 5 back post trebles between each block of colour, and you're going to work through your colour sequence, and by the end of the row you should have all your threads, all your new coloured threads attached in and just trailing at the back so that they're ready to use when you do your next row. So that's what you should look like. So there's an initial stitch there, and then 5 back post trebles, 3 front post trebles around one stitch, then another 5 back post trebles, and you can see how it creates like a ridge at the front, and that's what you're aiming for there. Then another 3 front post trebles in the next colour, 5 greens, not forgetting that on the 5th one you do need to swap colour again. So keep going across the row. I will get to the end and show you carefully what I've done so that hopefully then you can achieve exactly the same. So we'll see you again in a few minutes at the other end of the row. Okay, so that's been quite an intense row to do. I recommend now that you just go along and check that you've got all the little dots in the right order. I've already checked these so that, because not everybody would notice, but I think I would. If one of the colour sequences were out, I would definitely notice. So you've got loads of strings here. You're going to use them again almost, well, immediately. So I don't feel it's worth, fastening them all up and making them all tight and neat. We're at the end. You've worked your final set of back post trebles, and then it's a half treble into that last stitch. So you've wrapped, you've pulled that back through the loop, and then that's round and through all 3, and that gives you the shorter stitch at the end. So that's the end of row 24. We're going to turn next and do row 25, and we're going to be using all your colours again. So yeah, we'll see you again in a moment. Okay, row 25, another quite intense row, but on a similar vein to what we've done before. So we start with a 2 chain. Oh, just to point out, you will of course have increased stitches on the previous row, so you've got 191 stitches as opposed to the 145 that you had before. So we've done 2 chains, which count as the first half treble, and then we're going to do a front post treble around each of the next 5 stitches. So that's going from the front through to the back to the front again, and working a standard UK treble. So 1, 2, I've got my working yarn snarled up a bit there. And 3, 4, and as we do the 5th one, like we did on the previous row, we're going to be picking back up the next coloured yarn. So for me this one's going to be a red, and we're going to pull that through, and that stops the yarn bleeding. Keep this green yarn to the front this time, because this is the back of the work, and any threads that carry, we want them to carry at the back, not across the front. Now we're going to work back post trebles around these. So that red stitch there, we've turned the work over and we've gone from right to left underneath, and try and work the neatest possible. Oops, you can see it's a little bit fighting with me as it did last time. Start again. So we wrap, we go through, we bring that yarn back to the front. Don't grip it too tight, it does make it harder. So round and through two, round and through two, wrap again under the next one, which is the middle stitch, and bring that back through, round and through two, round and through two, and then the final wrap under that last red stitch, pull it back through, round and through two, and then bringing the red yarn towards you. I'm going to put the green one over the top and bring that through for the final loop, so you can see how you've got some threads forming at the back. And then we start again with our front post trebles around these 5 stitches. So that's my first one. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got 5 front post trebles, pausing at that last little bit. Find your working thread. Oops. Should really set my hand up properly as I do this, just so that the tension remains the same. Pull that through. So that's how it's going to look from the back, and that's from the front. You're getting a nice shape appearing at the front, and then it's wrap, turn your work over, push that through, bring it back, wrap through 2, wrap through 2, round, under there, wrap and through 2, wrap through 2, round, under, bring it back, wrap and through 2, swapping back to the green yarn and pull that through, and then we're back to working. Oops, keep the yellow, remember keep everything at this side, and we start working front post trebles again across the 5, and you're going to be working all the way across the row again with these, so we're not decreasing any stitches on this row, we're keeping all these extra ones going for another row. And as I get to there, change to my next colour. So you can see we're picking them up and using them again instantly. So with some other techniques you might want to use something like a fair owl fish or whatever to go with these, but I wouldn't for this because it's not going to be hanging around long enough. So that's what you're going to achieve on the right side, and that's the wrong side. Okay. Okay, so here we are at the end of row 25. So you can see we've got all the colours added in there, and we've finished with 5 front post trebles and then a half treble into that last stitch. So that's how it looks from the back, and that is what you are looking to achieve from the front. Okay, we'll be back again shortly with the next row. Okay, so here we are with row 26. So we start with a 2 chain, and then we're doing a back post treble around each of the next 5 stitches. So through there, oops, 1, 2, 5, and as we get to the last pull through on that, we go back to our yarn, whichever colour you've come up to next. Then we're going to do front post trebles, but we're doing a front post treble 3 together, which is quite a mouthful. So we wrap, go in behind the stitch to do the treble, and then pull through 2, and we pause at that point, and then we start another one. So we wrap, go under, we pull that back through, so you've got 4 on your hook at the moment, round and through 2, and then we wrap through, pull that back through, round and through 2, and then we're changing back to yarn A, and get hold of it. There we go, pull that through all 3, and you can see how you've got a lovely sort of teardrop shape, not teardrop but an oval but with points, not quite sure what you call that. So we wrap, we go back to doing our back post trebles, so that's 1, just need a bit more tension there, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we pause there, find the next yarn colour, bring that through, and then keep going with the front post treble 3 together combination. So that's 1, start again, go under, bring it back through, round and through 2, wrap again, under for the final time, wrap, wrap again and bring it through the 2, and then at that point pull through all 4. And you can see how with the length of the 120 centimetres you've just got a small amount left to sew in, so it works quite well. It seems like a lot of yarn when you're chopping those off to begin with, but it does work. So we'll carry on across the row and see you at the other end. Okay, so here we are at the end of the row, and we're finishing off with a final half treble. So you've got 5 of your back post trebles completed, and then there's a 6th stitch, which is your half treble. So that's what you're aiming for on that one. That's the front, and then the back. What I recommend now is spending a few minutes sewing all your ends in, and then they're all nice and secure before you turn and you work your next row. You are using the green again for the next row, so no need to change yarn at this point. So we'll see you again shortly with the next row. Okay, so here we are with row 27. So really lovely, easy, simple one. Chain of 3, and then 1 treble into every stitch across the row. So that will include, when you get to your the coloured stitch, you do need to work into that stitch as well, and at the end of this row you should be back to your 145 stitches. So that's UK trebles all the way across. Okay, we'll see you again shortly. Okay, so here we are at the end of that row. I've just popped a little holder, a little marker on there just to keep hold of my yarn at the moment. So that is how it will look from the front, and then here you've got your finished off back. You do actually need to change colour at this point, so I will just go back and change to the new colour, and then we can get started on that one. So that's this section complete, and I'll see you in the next bit. So here we are, we've just finished row 30 and we're about to start row 31. It's pretty much identical, so start with a chain of 3 and then 1 treble into every stitch to the end, but when you get to the end we are going to be changing colour, so just remember that as you get to the final stitch on that final pull through we need to change to the new yarn. Don't forget as well, your chain of 3 counts as a stitch, so you work your next stitch into the next stitch, not the same. Okay, see you again in a moment at the end of this row. Okay, so here we are at the end of the row, just a nice set of trebles running across, and then we join in right at the end with yarn H, which for me is the lime, and then we're going to turn the work ready for the next row. See you again in a moment. Okay, so we've got the wrong side facing us, and we're not working a turning chain this time. What we are going to do is work a slip stitch, so you just pull that through there and through the stitch you've just worked in that first one, and then we're working 1 treble into the next stitch, and then 1 slip stitch into the next stitch, and then another treble and a slip stitch and another treble and a slip stitch, and all the way across to make another lovely lime green row with texture that we've, similar to what we've made before, in fact identical to what we've made before. So we'll see you at the end of the row with the final instructions. Okay, so here we are at the end. We've finished with a slip stitch, and with this one we now don't need this colour of yarn, so I'm just snipping off there, pulling that through, so we've got a join there, and I will sew those ends in a little while. Don't turn your work, we're going to go back to the beginning of the row again for the next row. Okay. Okay, so we are right back at the beginning. We are still on the wrong side, so it's where we left this green, dark green yarn, and that we're just going to pull through on that first slipped stitch at the beginning of the previous row, and then chain 3, and then we're going to be working across these stitches here, not the fronts, that's the front, but working across the what would be the top of the stitches, but because of how the row pulls they're slightly more leaning towards me. So then we work a treble into that one, a treble into the next slip stitch, and a treble into the next, what was the treble of the row below. So we're going to keep going all the way along, working a standard UK treble in the dark green into every single stitch to the other end, and again including the chain 3 at the beginning you'll have 145 stitches. So that's how it looks on the front, which is rather pretty, and the back. Okay, we'll see you again shortly. Okay, so here we are at the end of the row. You can see there how nice the front looks, and that's the back. And then we are changing to yarn colour I, which for me is the chocolate, and we're then ready to work the next row. Okay, I'll see you in a minute with the next set of instructions. Okay, so we're now joining the squares, the square panel to the main part of the blanket. Now we've had a little problem with the video, so I've had to recreate a section of the blanket, and these are just plain squares, but they have the same edging, so it'll be worked in exactly the same way but using the squares that you've got. So we'll pick back up this the loop here, and then we've got these both at the moment the right way up, so we're going to fold that over to there so that the fronts are together, and then we're going to make one chain with the green yarn, and we're going to go into the corner and then into that first stitch and do a double crochet, and then we're going to go all the way across, working a double crochet for every stitch. So we're doing this all the way to the corner. So you can see here that you will end up with a slight ridge there, and that's correct, that's what you're supposed to have. It won't show on the other side, but you'll just be able to sort of feel it as you run your hand along this particular section of the blanket, and it makes a lovely firm join, which is what you need at this point. So as we get to the corner, so you've done your last stitch there, you go in there and then into the next stitch on the back, and then we avoid this bit and we go into the next one, and then you find the next stitch on the back and bring it through, and then you continue, and you do that all the way along to the end, and you do work your final double crochet into the final stitch at the end. So hopefully that fills in that little bit there for you. When you lay it out, it will lay lovely and flat, and you'll get this lovely join here. Okay.